Shalom everyone and welcome to Busisiwe Baruch in Hebrew, and my name is Abigail. Today we conclude on the series that we started a couple of weeks ago, which was looking at a relationship between a master and a servant. And in today's teaching we'll be looking at a topic entitled Action is the Evidence of Trust. And our scripture reading would be found in the book of Abrym, or Hebrews chapter 11 from verse 6 to 38. Hebrews chapter 11 from verse 6 to 38 as we conclude on today's topic entitled Action is the Evidence of Trust. Now, as we wrap up what we've been through in terms of this teaching in this particular series, we looked at the book of Romans chapter 10. And what we learned from the book of Romans chapter 10 was that Shaul, otherwise known as Paul, tells us that belief comes from hearing, and hearing the word of Yahuwah. Other version says faith comes by hearing, and hearing the word of Yahuwah. And that's basically telling us that there is no way that you can believe if you have not heard. So you must first hear something, and that which you can, with what you have then heard, then you can believe. So which basically means that the starting point for any belief, it is hearing, and hearing the word of Yahuwah. For even the word tells Yahuwah, actually tells us, and this is found in the book of Hebrews, that but without belief it is impossible to please Yahuwah. For whoever comes to him must believe that he is, and that is the rewarder of those who diligently seek him. But it starts by telling us that it is impossible, not it is hard, not it is difficult, it is literally impossible to please him without belief, without trusting. And I want to also just a little bit address this terminology, that I actually prefer the word belief as compared to faith, because a lot when you talk about faith, immediately people think of a religious term, a religious connotation towards it. But if I just say to someone, do you believe that you're going to pass this exam? They're going to say yes or no. Do you believe that you're going to win this competition, whether it's a running marathon or whatever kind of netball, whatever kind of sport? Do you believe that you guys are going to win? It's easy for people, they can relate to that kind of language. They will say, yeah, we believe that we're going to win. They can then say they believe because they've practiced, because they've studied the opponent's strategy, whatever the case might be, that leads them to believe. But once you say to people, do you have faith? Immediately then they think of biblical terms, they think of religious terms. And Yahuwah deals with us as human beings, not as religious creatures. And I said this before, that our relationship with him is based on father-son relationship, father-daughter relationship. It's based on the family relationship, not on religious terms. It is the other mighty ones that the people that follow those mighty ones, they must use certain terminology or religious term. There's no relationship with them. It's purely just you appease them. Supposedly if you appease them, that's what's going to happen to you. But very critical, there is no way that you can please Yahuwah other than belief, because it is impossible to please him without belief. And then now when you then having distinguished between faith and belief, and we say let's rather use the term belief, it's a simple English that everybody can understand. But then there's an element of trust, and the element of trust is above believing. It's that level of confidence that I am so sure. I don't just You know, people say, I believe it's going to happen, but they say with their words, I believe, but in a nutshell, they mean, I'm not sure it's going to happen or not. But when they say, I trust, so trust is at a higher level than belief. Trust is more solid, is more firm as compared to the terminology of belief. So in this regard, that's when then we're looking at today's teaching, as which says action is the evidence of trust. So we are now moving beyond believing. Belief was to first start, and then now that you've seen the person proving themselves in what you've believed to be saying, they've made themselves trustworthy. So you now beyond believing a person, but you are now trusting a person because they've proven themselves, because their word has been tested and proven to be so. And that's exactly how Yahuwah's word is. It is proven. It is tested. He said it in your word. I am not a man that I should lie. He said it in his word so many times that my word is as the rain that comes from the Shamayim, or from the heaven, waters the ground. It does not return to me having not accomplished that which I've sent it to accomplish. So his word, him and his word are one. You can't separate the two. He says what he means, and he means what we say. We also spoke about this previously. Now, having grasped the importance of belief, which we found in the book of Romans, that it comes by hearing, and hearing the word of the one who is trustworthy, which is Yahuwah. Now, the book of Yaqub, otherwise known as James chapter 2, it now takes this belief that came first by hearing the word. Then as a result of hearing the word, I then got to believe. But then the book of Yaqub then takes another notch higher, or another step higher. And then the book of Yaqub then Yaqub asks a question. Do you believe that there is one Allah? You do well. Even the demons believe and they shudder. Now that's a very, very a loaded statement. You believe. So what is the difference between you and the demons? The demons also believe. So there must be something else now over and above belief. And that's something over and above belief that is now going to distinguish you from the demons, distinguishing you from someone else. Basically complete this puzzle. You only have one piece of the puzzle. You need another piece of the puzzle to complete it. And that other piece of the puzzle is found in the book of Yaqub chapter 2, or James chapter 2. It now talks about action. It is now saying that you believe that there is one Allah, you do well. Even the demons believe and they shudder. And then it says, wasn't Abrahym tested by acting? He did not only believe Yahuwah, but he acted. He put his action, he put his belief into action. He proved that he trusts Yahuwah, because even the word says that he believed that Yahuwah was even able to raise Yitzhak, or Isaac, even from the dead. That's how much he trusted him. And it says that as the spirit, sorry, the body without the spirit is dead, so is belief without action. So in being able to complete this process, you need to act. Because if there is no action, that belief is good as just being dormant there. It will not do you any good. It only is able to bring any action once you then demonstrate the action. And that's when then the word tells us that, remember, the series was about a relationship between the master and the servant. Now we saw then how through the book of Yaqub or James chapter 2, that Abrahym was then promoted from being a servant, whom he was a faithful servant, but then the word in the book of Yaqub chapter 2 then tells us that he became a friend of Yahuwah. He then moved beyond the stage of being a servant. It was just a starting point to be a servant, and he proved himself. How did he prove himself? By acting, by putting his trust into action. And that's the two critical. If there's anything that you might have missed in this teaching, get this: the two goes hand in hand. You have to first hear the word, and once you've heard the word of Yahuwah, then belief will come. It will come by hearing. But having that belief or having that trust on its own, it is not sufficient on its own, but the action, putting into action that which you believe in, that's what then completes the whole cycle. That's when then completes when Yahweh says that I am pleased because of the action that a person has taken. And that's also what we also learned in the previous teaching, which was entitled, Why do you call me master if you don't do what I ask you to do? So the emphasis there is not only listening to what the master is saying, it's not only hearing what the master is saying, but it is to do what he commands you to do, what he instructs you to do. That then completes the process. So without doing, then he is not your master, because he's exactly as he says, why do you call me master if you don't do what I tell you? So you only demonstrate that you see him as a master by doing what he tells you to do, and not arguing it, and not coming with counter arguments or suggestions or inputs, but submitting yourself to his commands, to his instruction. And then the other part also in the previous teaching that we learned about the importance of doing. He says that, Yahusha says, many will come in that day and say, Master, Master, have we not prophesied in your name? Have you not given to the poor? Have you not done X, Y, and Z? And then he will say to them, depart from me, you workers of lawlessness. I never knew you. And why would he say that he never knew them? And it says, only, and then Yahusha says, only he who is doing my Father's desire will enter the reign of the Shamayim. So the only requirement, the only permission, the only access into any person accessing the reign of the Father's kingdom, or the reign of the Shamayim, or the kingdom of heaven. It's not only by saying this after me, I believe that Yahusha died for me and accept him as master and savior. No. That is just the starting point. But what determines, what separates the goat from the sheep, what separates the wheat from the tares, what will separate those who will make it to the kingdom of heaven? Did you do? It's the action part. It's not how many times you fasted. It's not how many times you prayed. It's not how many times you gave to the poor, which all those are good. It's not how many times, you went to church. It's not how many times. The determining factor is in the doing. Because when you do, then you demonstrate trust in the one who is giving you instruction. Because when you do, that then shows obedience. All right, so then in today's teaching, as we close, as I said earlier on, we're going to be looking at Abrym, or Hebrews chapter 11 from verse 6 to 38. And then it reads, but without belief. So remember, I said that it's better to use the word trust, because trust is more firm than belief. It supersedes belief. So you are above believing, you now trust. It's like, not only do I hear, I know that it is the case. It's the evidence of things not seen. That confidence that you have, that trust. All right. So it says then, but without trust, it is impossible to please him. For he who comes to Yahuwah has to believe that he is, and that is a rewarder of those who earnestly seek him, or who diligently seek him. Now, this is what we're taking. I want you to draw your attention, and you can see these two words constantly being repeated. Verse 7, it says, by belief or by trust, Noah, having been warned of what was yet unseen, having feared, prepared an ark. So let's dissect this one statement, one sentence very quickly. It says, by trust, verse 7, by belief, by trust, Noah having been warned. So what happened? Noah first heard. Because it says having been warned. How was he warned? He was warned through a message, through an instruction, through a command. So he heard a message, he heard a warning. And remember, we said in Romans chapter 10 that belief or trust comes by hearing. So there was first step that we see in terms of the sequence of Romans 10 and Yaqub 2. Noah heard. Noah was warned. But after being warned, he didn't just sit in like, oh my goodness, I wonder what's going to happen. No. It then tells us that he prepared an ark. So he acted. He did not only hear from the warning, but he acted. And remember, we're saying action is the evidence of trust. It says that of what was yet unseen, having feared. So he responded with that fear, because we need to have the fear of Yahuwah when he tells us something, to say, I'm going to do it because I trust him, I respect him, I honor him. It's not fear of intimidation, but out of trust, reverence, fear. That's what I'm talking about. Prepared an ark. This is now we see Yaqub chapter 2 working hand in hand with Romans chapter 10. That after believing, he then acted by doing what? By preparing the ark. Because the word told us that a belief without action is dead, just like a body without spirit. All right? And then it says that he prepared an ark to save his house, through which he condemned the world and became heir of the obedience which is according to belief. That was verse 7. Verse 8. Remember, we're reading Hebrews chapter 11. Now we're on verse 8. And it says, by belief. It's like verse 7 says by belief. Verse 8 starts by saying by belief. Verse 17 by belief. By verse 24 by belief. Verse 28 by belief. It's not just wasting words. It tells us that action comes from believing. Action comes from trusting. So the source of it all is belief. The source of it all is trusting. But how do you get to the level of trusting someone? You must have heard something. You must have. That's why Romans says faith or belief come by hearing, and hearing the word of Yahuwah. Just like also fear comes by hearing, and hearing the word of Hasatan, or the accuser, or the devil. Either way, what are you hearing? Are you hearing the word of Yahuwah? And if you hear the word of Yahuwah, you're going to respond in faith. You're going to respond in belief. You're going to respond in trust. Trusting Yahuwah. But if you are hearing the word of Hasatan, or the word of the devil, the evil one, the enemy, then fear is going to come. Hence, the starting point is, what are you hearing? Because what you're hearing is like a seed that is going to give forth to a fruit, give forth to a harvest. So if you're hearing the word of Yahweh, belief or trust is going to be the fruit. If you're hearing the word of Hasatan, fear is going to come forth. Now verse 8 it says, by belief or by trust, Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to the place which he was about to receive an inheritance. And he went out not knowing where he was going. There's these two, I'm going to call them twins. They always go together. It's like, surely goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life. Goodness always goes with mercy, right? Now, in this case, belief that comes by hearing must be demonstrated. The two always go together by action. Verse 8 tells us that Abraham heard about the promise that he was to receive an inheritance. He had an instruction when he was called to go out to the place which he was to receive this inheritance. He had Yahweh promising him. He had Yahweh telling him that he needs to come out of the land where he was at to the land that is promised. But hearing on its own would not have done any good to Abraham. It would not prove that he really trusted. And action would have to be followed by Abraham. And we told that he went out not knowing where he was going. So going out, that was then the action. That was then the Yaqub chapter 2 or James chapter 2 aspect. The two goes hand in hand. Belief or trust comes by hearing, and hearing the word of Yahweh. That's the first part. But that goes together with then the action to demonstrate that indeed you believe, you trust what you heard. For action is the evidence of trust. Verse 11, it says, by belief also. Now we see, as I said, the fact that this Hebrews 11 starts by saying by belief, by belief, by belief. It's not just wasting words. It tells us that nothing happens out of believing or other than believing or outside believing. Everything will only happen once you have first believed, once you have first trusted. And the only way to get to the aspect or level of trusting, you must have heard the word of Yahweh first. All right. And then it says that by belief also Sarah herself was enabled to conceive the seed. She bore a child when she was past the normal age, because she deemed him trustworthy who had promised. So she deemed him trustworthy. Do you deem Yahweh trustworthy? And you're going to demonstrate whether you deem him trustworthy by acting on that which he has instructed you to do. And we discussed this last Shabbat, whether do we only act up on what Yahweh has said on his written word. And I said no. There are certain things that Yahweh speaks to us directly that are not necessarily on the way that he will give us instructions. Say, for example, he will say to you, you are used to using a particular road when you go to school, when you go to a shop, or wherever you're going. On that particular day, says use a different road. There is no scripture that talks about different road. But you need to then hear him when he speaks and then act according to the instruction that he's giving you at that particular point in time. That's how you then show, that's how then you demonstrate that you trust him. And if other people use the other route, it's not wrong for them, because they didn't hear the instruction. That's why I always talk about when people say, Sister Abigail, is it wrong to do this? Is it wrong to do this? There's no such like a book of rights and wrongs. The word tells us that to him, very important, To him who knows what he's supposed to do and he does not do it, to him it is sin. It might not be sin to someone else, but when Yahweh has told you to do something and you are not doing it, you are being disobedient, and disobedient is transgression. All right, so we then see that Sarah trusted him, trusted Yahweh, as seen him to be trustworthy, who had made that particular promise. What promise? That she will, the following year, this time next day, you will have a child. What happened there? Romans 10 happened. She heard the word of Yahweh. Verse 17, by belief, there we go again, by belief, Abrahym, when he was tested, offered up Yitzhak. So by belief, when he was tested, he put on an action. When he was tested, offered up Yitzhak. This is an action. And he who had received the promise offered up his only begotten son, of whom it was said, in Yitzhak your seed shall be called, reckoning that Yahuwah was able to raise even from the dead. Reckoning that Yahuwah was even able to raise Yitzhak even from the dead, from which he received him back as a type. Hebrews 11:17, it says, when he was tested. What was tested? Abraham was not just tested in his personal capacity. No, the word that he received was tested. The promise that he received, that through Isaac, through Yitzhak, then he will be the father of many nations. Now, this promise that he had of him, that through this son, this only begotten son, the son that he loves, a son of his old age when he was hundreds, and Sarah was 90 when they had the son, and this is the son through whom all the nations of the earth shall be baruched, or shall be multiplied, or shall receive salvation and rejoice. Now that very same person, now he's being tested to lay in the altar, to kill, to be frank, to sacrifice, not just to pray for him, to kill. Now he could be saying, but how come this is the very same son that you said that through him I would be able I would be the father of many nations? That word, that promise was tested. So this is very important that we learn this aspect. When things happen to us, they don't happen to us because Yahweh is being unfair to us. It's never personal, as people say. It's not personal. The word that you have received is being tested. In that, are you going to be, do you truly believe the word that you have received in spite of the test that you are now going through? Are you still going to stand in that word? Are you going to still stand in that promise? And we see Abraham standing in that promise. That's why the word tells us in verse 19 that he reckoned that Yahuwah was able to raise even from the dead. That, you know what? Here's the promise. Yahuwah said that through this young man, through this son, through Yitzhak, nations shall be blessed. Now, if he says that I must now sacrifice and kill this son on the altar, clearly it is possible that he will even be able to raise him from the dead. That's how that promise, that word was tested even in his mind, of saying that either way, he said, I will be the father of many nations. If it means that he will raise this man this boy from the dead, he will do it. So very, very, very important is that the word that you have received will be tested. And how you respond when that test comes will then demonstrate whether you truly trusted the giver of the word. Because you cannot separate Yahuwah from his word, because him and his word are one. He can't say something that is opposite his word, right? Now, we also see Yahusha teaching us about the testing that happens, and we see as he demonstrates this through a parable found in the book of Mark. I'm just going to take it from Mark chapter 4 from verse 16 to 17. But remember this parable. This is a parable about the sower who was going out sowing the seed. It tells us that some of the seeds fell by the wayside, and some of the seeds fell by the rocky stones. Some of the seed fell on the fertile ground. And then when he explains this parable then to his disciples, when he, in particular, he explains the one about that seed that fell on the rocky places, he says, Mark chapter 4 from verse 16 to 17, and he says, and likewise, these are the ones sown on rocky places, who when they hear the word, immediately receive it with joy, and they have no root in themselves, but are short-lived. Then when pressure or persecution arises, why does pressure and persecution arise? Pressure and persecution arises because of the word, not because of you. Who are you after all? Satan doesn't care about you. What he's challenging is challenging Yahuwah. What he's challenging is challenging Yahuwah's word. Who in any case, Yahuwah and his word, they are one. Remember that he's the first one, he's the one that says, I will be like the Most High. I will be on the mount and that everyone should worship me, and that's how he felt. Obviously, we also went through that particular teaching. So, as the kids would say, his beef is with Yahuwah. And we just happen to be, because we are connected, because we are one with Yahuwah, he actually provokes Yahuwah by touching us. He actually provokes Yahuwah by hurting us and testing us. That's why even he said about Job, he said to Yahuwah, Job only loves you because of the riches that he has. If you were to take everything from him, he would curse you. He was testing Yahuwah using his own child, Job, just like he did with Abraham. He said, Abraham now has a son. He hasn't done any sacrifice for you, and he's just busy with his life. He was only serving you because he didn't have a child. Now that he has a son, he is now forgotten about you. And Yahuwah said, not so. So Hasatan, that's why Hasatan means the adversary. Satan is not a name, it just means the adversary. He is the adversary of Yahuwah. And then because we belong to Yahuwah, then he challenges that which is Yahuwah's as well. Right, so let's learn this part. When things happen in life, they're not happening just, people, I don't know why these things happening. No, it's not personal. Hasatan is testing the word that you have received, the promise that you have received, whether do you truly believe it. We're going to see it, whether you truly believe the word that you have received through pressure, through affliction, through persecution. And then this parable, then Yahusha explains, it says, when pressure and persecution arises because of the word, immediately they stumble, or immediately they are offended. Why? Because they just took the word by excitement. They just accepted the promise by excitement. They did not nurture a relationship to be beyond the words that have been promised, to be, I know him. He loves me. He cares so much for me. When he said he will never leave me nor forsake me, it is because he loves me. And if he said it, he will do it because he is moved by love. Whatever he does, the word says that he so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. So it's not enough to just hear the word, but you need to hear. It's like it's not enough to receive a message, but you have to receive the messenger. It's not enough to hear the word of Yahuwah and you don't have a relationship with him. You'll literally be just reading the ink that's written on the papers. But when you move beyond reading what is written, like as in as the word says, the letter kills, but the spirit gives life. The Ruach of Yahuwah is the one that you have a relationship with, who then reveals things to you. Once you're born with that, you will not immediately just stumble, and that the excitement that you had was short-lived. So even with Abraham, the reason why we see him in being able to even put his son and ready to literally kill him and offer him as a sacrifice, because not only did he hear the promise once, not only did he hear the word once, but over and over and over again, Yahweh appeared to him. He had a relationship with him. From the time he said, leave the place of Haran into the land which I'm going to send a gift to you, the promised land, which was the land of Canaan. At that particular time already, he was nurturing that relationship with Yahuwah. Then when it came to the ultimate test, he passed the test because he has had a relationship. But if you just receive the word, you don't nurture a relationship with the giver of the word, with the owner of the word, then you're in love with just letters on the paper, on the piece of paper, not with the word who is life. As the word says that in the beginning was the word, and the word became flesh. Yahuwah, who then his word is the one that we must not be excited about his word, but must be excited by him and having a relationship with him. That is very crucial. That test and sort of persecution, pressures, those are coming to test the word. It is never personal. Are you doing this truly because you trust him, like Sarah saw Yahuwah and deemed Yahuwah trustworthy? All right, verse 28, by belief he performed the Passover. Oh, sorry, I skipped. I should be reading verse 24, right? In verse 24, still on Hebrews chapter 11, it says, by belief, Moshe, having become great, refused to be called the son of the daughter of Pharaoh, choosing rather to be afflicted with the people of Yahuwah than to enjoy the pleasures of sin for a time. Verse 26, deeming the reproach of Mashiach greater riches than the treasures in Mitzrayim or in Egypt, for he was looking to the reward. Now, again, the trust that you have is going to be also demonstrated by you sacrificing some level of comfort, sacrificing not just level of comfort, sacrificing comfort. In this case, we are told that Moshe refused to be called the son of the daughter of Pharaoh, so refused to be called or to be the prince of Egypt, and rather choosing to be afflicted with the people of Yahuwah. So are you going to choose to be afflicted for the greater purpose, or you going to be able to want to enjoy the comfort that is going to be short-lived anyway? This is what we are learning, that action goes with affliction. as we read just now in the book of Mark chapter 4 from verse 16 to 17, that persecution, affliction, pressure, they come to test the word that you have received, the promise that you have received. Verse 27 then reads, by belief, then it goes again, by belief, constantly by belief, he left Mitzrayim. That's an action. Just like refusing to be called the daughter of Pharaoh, that was an action. And also by him leaving Mitzrayim, it was also an action. He had to. Action is the evidence of trust. He left Mitzrayim, not fearing the wrath of the king, for he was steadfast as seeing him who is invisible. Verse 28, by belief he performed the Passover and the sprinkling of blood. What is performance? It's an action. He acted when he was warned to say, listen, on this particular evening, this is what you are to do. Put the blood on the doorpost, for an angel of death is going to come and destroy whichever house that does not have a blood on the doorpost. He acted. He didn't just hear the word. He didn't just hear the warning, but he demonstrated that he trusted the word. He trusted the giver of the word by acting. And the sprinkling of the blood, lest he who destroyed the firstborn should touch them. Verse 29, by belief. Like again and again and again, there is nothing that you can do without believing. And believing must come first. You must first hear the word of Yahuwah. Then belief will be their fruit. But that on its own is not good enough. Action must demonstrate that which you believe. Verse 29. By belief they passed through the Red Sea as by the dry land. And when the Mitzrayim tried it, they were drowned. So we are seeing them doing what also? Taking an action of doing what? Of passing through the Red Sea. That was an action that they took. And when the Mitzrayim tried it, they were drowned. Verse 13. By belief, the walls of Jericho fell, having been surrounded for 7 yumim or 7 days. So they did what? They received an instruction to surround the walls of Jericho over 7 days, and they acted on that. They didn't say, why 7 days? What's the point in this thing? Like, duh, why should we do this? But they believe without seeing, hence acting on that which you have not seen. For what is the point of calling it belief if you already have it? The word even tells us. Verse 31, by belief. How many times? Every single word, these verses, they start by saying in Hebrews 11, by belief, by belief, by belief. Why is this being emphasized? Because other than belief or outside of belief, there is nothing that you're going to achieve in the reign of Yahuwah. For the reign of Yahuwah operates by belief. The currency in the kingdom of Yahuwah is belief. It is trust, which other people call faith. By belief, Rahab the whore did not perish with those who did not believe. Having received the spies with peace, what did she do? She received the spies with peace. When other people they had would say, yea, we hear of your allure, open the Red Sea for you, drown the Mitzrayim for you. She acted on that. She acted and received the spies with peace. So as we then conclude this series of the combination of the relationship between the master and the servant, that is demonstrated by not only hearing the master when he speaks, but acting on what the master has instructed, has commanded you to do. Here is the part. Action is risky. Action is risky. There is no way that you can act without a risk associated with it. Even in the world, they say the higher the risk, the greater the reward. So if you are risk averse, you're not gonna get greater reward as well. So anything that is worth a reward has an element of risk. Action is risky. You need to step out of your comfort zone. It was risky for Shimon, otherwise known as Peter, to step out of the boat in the midst of the boisterous sea. When everybody else, as they were seeing Yahusha walking on the water, and they were scared. And then they said, "Is it you, or is it a ghost?" And Yahusha said, "It is I." And then Shimon then said, "If it is you, bid me to come to you, call me to come to you." He took a risk. The other 11 that were in the boat, they were in their comfort zone. They were in their protected space. There was no risk that they took. But he took the risk of walking on the water, and he was rewarded for that particular risk that he took. And then also, if we look at Abrahym, for him to sacrifice his son, it says, reckoning that Yahuwah was able to raise even from the dead. That also is a risk. He took a risk by saying, like he was believing, reckoning that Yahuwah would raise him from the dead. But Hasatan or the enemy would have said to him, what if he doesn't raise him? What if? He probably said that, and Abrym had to rebuke him there and then, Hasatan, and say, Yahuwah is trustworthy. He said through Yitzhak, I will be the father of many nations. So how is he going to do it? I do not know. I trust him. He had to take a risk. The other element of risk that we see is that when we look at the Red Sea being opened, that was an element of risk, because it's like the Red Sea were literally opened in the 11th hour, or on the 11th hour, because the Mitzrayim, they were already behind them, and they could see them following them. At that particular time, Yahuwah opened the Red Sea. But this was different. The Red Sea opened, and then they walked through. But in the case of the river Jordan, or Jordan, the priest had to put their feet first on the Jordan River, or Jordan River, before it could open. So the priest had to take a risk. They had to put their feet on in the Jordan River, and then as they did that, then the river opened. So they had to take a risk. Action goes with the risk. There's no way that you can act on something without any risk associated with it. That's a risk that the priest had to take. And this is found in the book of Yahusha, chapter 3, from verse 15 to 16, and it reads, "And as those bearing the ark came to the Jordan, or river Jordan, and the feet of the priest bearing the ark dipped in the edge of the water, now the Jordan overflows all its banks during all the time of the harvest, that the mayim, or the waters which came down from upstream, stood still and rose in a cut-off, and the people passed over opposite Jericho, or Jericho." Verse 32. And what more shall I say? So before we move there, so I was emphasizing on Yahusha from verse chapter 3, or otherwise known as Joshua. This is Yahusha, the son of Nun, or Joshua chapter 3, verse 15 to 16. It was telling us that the priest had to put their feet first in the Jordan, and then only it opened. And then when it opened, then the other people started crossing. So when you are the servant of Yahuwah, when Yahuwah is your master, You are the one that must take that risk, and that the other people will follow. Because we see the role of the priest, that the priests were the ones that were standing before Yahuwah on behalf of the land, on behalf of the people. They were the leaders. They had to take the risk, and then the other people follow. This is what we see the demonstration of servant as well as master relationship. Hence then the word tells us many are called to servanthood, but few are chosen. The ones that now progress from being chosen, progress from being called to being chosen, these are the ones who go all the way, taking this risk, greater risk as they come and as they demonstrate their trust to Yahuwah. All right, let's close this teaching on Hebrews chapter 11, and now we're going to be reading from verse 32. Remember, we concluded by saying action is risky. Verse 32. And what more shall I say? For the time would fail me to relate of Gideon, of Barak, and Shimshon, and Yiftach, also of Daud or David, Samuel, and the prophets, who through belief overcame reigns. So through belief, they overcame kingdoms. So kingdom didn't just come and fell on their laps sitting. They had to act to conquer these nations, these kingdoms, right? And then it says that they worked obedience, obtained promises, stopped the mouths of lions, quenched the power of fire, escaped the edge of the sword, out of the weaknesses were made strong, became mighty in battle, put foreign armies to flight. It is war. It is war. Things are not just going to happen chilling, watching YouTube. That's why I was saying to the other sister the other time that I think we've become fat cats as far as hearing the word, but we're not putting into action what we have heard. When opportunities come for us to demonstrate the word that we have heard, we succumb under a offense, just like Mark chapter 4 verse 16 and 17 says. We stumble, we cry, but why me? Why is this things happening to me? Forgetting that Yaqub tells us that count it all joy, brethren, when all these afflictions are happening to you, for it is then the testing, the proving of your belief that will then give a reward. So when the word tells us that work out your salvation with fear and trembling, when the word tells us that the reign of Yahuwah, the kingdom of heaven, suffered violence, and the violent take it by force, kindwa, it's war. You have to fight for your position. You have to fight for your inheritance. You have to fight for what you believe in. You must demonstrate that I will stand for what I believe in no matter what. And we see this it's being demonstrated here, that these people, they stopped the mouths of lion, quenched the power of fire, escaped the edge of the sword, out of weaknesses. That's why 2 Corinthians chapter 12 verse 9, when Shaul said, I prayed concerning this thorn that it be removed from me. 3 times I prayed, but Yahuwah said, my favor is sufficient for you. And then he says, I'd rather rejoice in persecution, in need, in weaknesses, for then his power is demonstrated in my weaknesses. In those affliction, in that need, that's when his power is made perfect. So let's accept it. It's not just going to be a rosy, like a nice walk in the park, eating ice cream. No. Someone wants to take your inheritance, and you must fight for that which is yours. Someone wants to kill, steal, and destroy you, and you need to take your position. It's like a wrestling. Put on that armor of Yahweh that you may stand after having done all to stand. Stand your ground. Women received back their dead by resurrection, and others were tortured, not accepting release to obtain a better resurrection. And others had trials of mockings and flogging and more of chains and imprisonment. We see this not only through Yahusha, who went through mocking, who went through flogging, who went through so much pain. We also see it with Shaul, otherwise known as Paul. It tells us that he would be moved from one place to another through even the basket flowing down the wall. At some point, they had beaten Shaul and left him for dead. They thought he was dead, and he was alive. All of them, they went through the same persecution. And that's what then Yahusha says, that if they've done it to me, being your master, they will also do it to you, because you are my servant. For the master, for the servant is not greater than his master. If they persecuted me, they will persecute you too. If they accepted me, they will accept you too. But this is the reality that we need to accept, that the world, if the world has rejected him, they will reject us too. So we shouldn't want to fit in and be accepted by that whom they've already rejected, our master. They went about in sheepskin, in goatskin, being in need, afflicted, mistreated, of whom the world was not worthy, wandering in deserts and mountains and caves and holes of the earth or of the earth. Yahweh took so what we see, that we're seeing that as soon as they step out and accept that calling, and they move from being called to being chosen, that they have raised their hand to be to be listed as one of the enemies of Hasatan, and the devil will make sure every single way that he wants a way of attacking them and destroying them, because as he's first and foremost, he is an adversary to Yahuwah. And by us being the children of Yahuwah, by us serving Yahuwah, by default, we are also his enemies and his adversaries. And most of the time, he does that to provoke Yahuwah. And that's why then Yahusha said to Shaul, on the time when he was converted on his way to Damascus, he said, Shaul, Shaul, why are you persecuting me? Because Shaul thought that he was just persecuting the believers at that particular time, but he was not saying, why are you persecuting my followers or those that believe in me? He said, why are you persecuting me? Because Hasatan, when he attacks us, he actually attacks Yahweh himself. As we close then, we wrap up with this reality check about action is risky. Yahuwah took a risk by giving up his only begotten Son for us, trusting that we will receive his gift. Some of us have received his gift, but some have rejected his gift. But nonetheless, he took that risk of sacrificing, of giving his Son to go through what he went through, to the extent of dying and dying on the tree. That's the risk that Yahuwah took. But Yahusha himself also took a risk, as the word tells us that he laid down his life. Why did he lay down his life? He trusted that Yahusha trusted that his Father would resurrect him. He had to trust also. And that was a risk, because Hassan will say, what if he doesn't raise you up from the dead? What then? No one would raise Yahusha from the dead. We all know that he raised so many people from the dead, but there was no one who would resurrect him. The only trust that he had of him being resurrected was being resurrected by the Father. and he had to trust the Father. That's why we talk about action is the evidence of trust. And that action, do not be fooled. It's not just acting as a walking in the park. There's risk with that action. There's persecution with that action, pressure, affliction, scorning, weaknesses, challenges, flogging, so many things. But ultimately, because Yahusha says, be of good cheer, I have overcome the world. Because he has overcome the world, so we will also overcome. For we are more than conquerors in him. For he has conquered and has enabled us also to conquer. It is for this reason that it is impossible then to please Yahuwah without trusting him, which is demonstrated then by what? By taking a risk. This is the last question I'm going to leave as we close this series to ponder on, to reflect on. What risk have you taken or are you taking to demonstrate the trust that you have in Yahuwah? What risk have you taken? What risk are you taking to demonstrate that you are trusting Yahuwah and his word? Please do that assessment. That's only you know that you have progressed from receiving the word to trusting, to taking an action. And that action, then you ask yourself, what was the risk associated with the action that I took? Did you risk your job? Did you risk your business? Did you risk your friendship? Did you risk your network? Did you risk your children? Did you risk your family? What risk did you take in demonstrating that you trust Yahuwah? We have seen the risk that Abrahym took by laying down his son on Mount Moriah about to kill him. We've seen the risk that Shimon took by stepping out of the boat and walking on the water. We've seen the risk that the Father himself took by giving his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in him will not perish but will have eternal life. We saw the risk that Yahusha himself took by laying down his life, trusting that the Father would raise him up, that the Father would resurrect him. What risk have you taken? What risk are you taking? And if you're not able to answer any of these questions, or if you failed the test, just repent and ask Yahuwah for another opportunity and walk again. While you still have breath in your lungs, there is an opportunity to demonstrate your trust in him. Shalom.